Imagine surviving 10 years of absolute, unrelenting hell. You tear down the greatest fortress in the ancient world. You defeat impossible monsters. You survive endless bloodshed, betrayal, and God-sent storms. Against every single law of nature and fate, you live. At long last, your fleet reaches home. You step onto your own shores. Not as a soldier, not as a mere survivor, but as the undefeated king of kings. That was Agamemnon. And within hours of stepping inside his own palace, he was dead. Not on a glorious battlefield. Not with a sword in his hand fighting a worthy rival. His own wife trapped him like a wild animal in his bath and butchered him like cattle. To the ancient Greeks, winning a war wasn't the ultimate proof of a hero. Anyone could die bravely with a spear through their chest. Anyone could swing an axe in the heat of frenzy. The real test, the ultimate psychological filter, was something else entirely. They called it Nostos. The journey home. War proved your strength, but home proved your wisdom. Agamemnon was the strongest warlord in Greece. But he failed the test of Nostos the precise second he lowered his guard. After 10 years of absolute conquest, he expected what any arrogant king would expect: triumph, loyalty, feast, and celebration. He walked through his front doors expecting a hero's welcome. Instead, he walked straight into a cold, mathematically planned execution. While he was bleeding on the plains of Troy, his wife, Clytemnestra, hadn't been weeping. She had been calculating. She waited 10 years for revenge. The moment Agamemnon stepped into his warm bath to wash away a decade of dust and gore, a heavy, unyielding net was thrown over his body. His arms were pinned to his sides. He couldn't fight back. He couldn't reach a weapon. He couldn't even stand up. The greatest ruler in the ancient world died, screaming in complete disbelief, slaughtered in the one room where he believed he was utterly safe. Now, fast forward a few years. Another hero from that exact same war is finally clawing his way back to his island kingdom. Odysseus. On paper, Odysseus should have suffered the exact same fate. In fact, his situation was infinitely worse. Inside his palace at Ithaca, there weren't just two conspirators waiting for him. There were 108. 108 young, ruthless, armed nobles, known as the suitors. They had invaded his home, devoured his livestock, terrorized his servants, and were actively pressuring his wife to pick one of them to take his crown. And if Odysseus dared to step foot on his own island, they had already sworn a pact, kill him on sight. If Odysseus had returned the way any victorious king traditionally would, with banners flying high, horns blowing, and his chest puffed out with pride, he would have been dead before his sandals hit the sand. So why didn't he? How did Odysseus avoid the exact same trap that annihilated the King of Kings? Because before he ever set foot on Ithaca, he made one terrifying detour. Desperate to find a way back, Odysseus sails his black ship to the literal edge of the living universe, to the land of perpetual fog and shadow. He digs a trench in the black earth, pours out offerings of honey, milk, wine, and barley, and slits the throats of dark sheep, pouring warm, fresh blood into the pit. In Greek lore, the dead have no voice, no memory, and no strength until they drink the blood of the living. Out of the endless dark, thousands of screeching, hollow spirits rush toward the trench. And then, one spirit steps forward. His face is gaunt. His posture is broken. His phantom wounds still bleed through his shadowy form. It is Agamemnon. Odysseus is horrified. He stretches out his hands to hug his old commander, but his arms pass through empty smoke. Odysseus desperately asks, "What? God destroyed your fleet? What army cut you down? Did you fall in a glorious last stand at sea?" Agamemnon replies, "No storm at sea destroyed me. No enemy army cut me down on the field. It was my own wife and her lover. They invited me into my own hall under the guise of a feast and slaughtered me like an ox at a trough." The fallen King of Kings stands over the blood pit, bitter, broken, and filled with eternity's regret. And then he passes down 3 golden rules to Odysseus. 3 rules that would alter the course of mythological history. 1. Never lower your guard. 2. Never reveal everything you know. 3. Never return home openly. Return in secret. Agamemnon looks Odysseus directly in the eyes and leaves him with one final, haunting command. Steer your ship to your homeland in secret, never in the light of day. For there is no trust left in women, and no safety for a king who relies on his title. That single conversation in the underworld changed everything. Agamemnon's brutal execution became the blueprint that saved Odysseus' life. The fallen king's greatest failure cured Odysseus of his own greatest flaw. Ego. Remember who Odysseus used to be. This is the exact same man who defeated the Cyclops through pure genius, escaped his cave under the bellies of sheep, and then could not stop himself from screaming his real name across the water. He couldn't just win in silence. He needed the monster to know who beat him. He needed his name echoing across the world. He was brilliant, but he was infected with the deadly disease of ancient heroes, hubris. If the version of Odysseus who fought the Cyclops had arrived back at Ithaca, he would have marched right up the front steps, blown the trumpets, announced his title, and walked straight into 100 spears. Agamemnon's ghost killed Odysseus' ego. He replaced glory with something far more lethal, tactical paranoia. When Odysseus finally steps onto the shores of Ithaca, he doesn't look like a king. With the help of the goddess Athena, he transforms into a beggar. Dirty, broken, toothless, forgotten, invisible. Think about the psychological endurance this required. This is a king who ruled this land with absolute authority. He enters his own kingdom as a ghost. He walks through his own grand doors while arrogant strangers are eating his food, drinking his finest wine, and flirting with his wife. They insult him. They throw food at his head. They strike him with wooden stools. And Odysseus does nothing. He doesn't reach for a blade. He doesn't shout his name. He swallows his pride, absorbs the humiliation, and plays the fool. Because while they are mocking a beggar, the beggar is mapping the kill zone. He counts every single suitor. He notes which exit doors lead outside. He identifies which servants are traitors and which ones are still loyal. He tests his son, Telemachus. He tests his old piggerter, Eumaeus. He even tests his wife, Penelope, listening to her grief without dropping his mask for a single fraction of a second. Agamemnon entered his palace as a proud god and died like a fool. Odysseus entered his palace as a broken beggar and constructed a fortress of death. Then comes the day of the trial. Penelope sets out Odysseus's ancient hunting bow, a weapon so massive, so stiff, that no ordinary man can even bend it. She promises to marry whoever can string it and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads. One by one, the young, strong suitors try. They sweat, they grease the wood, they strain, and every single one of them fails miserably. Then, the beggar steps up. The suitors laugh. They crack jokes. They don't notice that behind them, the heavy palace doors have just been locked from the outside by loyal servants. They didn't notice that every single weapon hanging on the stone walls has been quietly removed during the night. Odysseus strings the weapon as effortlessly as a musician tuning a lyre. He plucks the string. The sound rings through the hall like the cry of a swallow. And in that precise millisecond, the magic disguise fades away. The suitors freeze. The laughter dies instantly in their throats. Standing before them is not a beggar. Standing before them is a shadow brought back from the dead. Odysseus. The suitors scramble for the exits. They are locked. They reach for the walls for swords and shields. They are empty. They are trapped inside a closed box with the most dangerous mind in the ancient world. This was not a duel. It wasn't a heroic contest. It was an execution. A cold, calculated, military liquidation of every single threat in the room. Most heroes in classical mythology survive through raw physical force, divine luck, or magical items. Odysseus survived because he listened, not to a thunderclap from Zeus, not to an oracle on a mountaintop. He survived because he listened to the voice of a fallen comrade bleeding in the dark of the underworld. Agamemnon died alone in the dark of his own bathhouse so that Odysseus could live to reclaim his home. The King of Kings paid the ultimate price for his arrogance, and in doing so, he gave the world its greatest lesson in tactical survival. Bury your pride, play the fool, observe in silence, and strike only when the room is locked and victory is absolute. Every legend hides a lesson, every myth leaves behind a blueprint, and every frame reveals something the mind almost missed. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit subscribe to The Cognitive Frame, where we don't just tell stories, we decode them. Until next time, keep looking beyond the obvious.